Hello, it's time for Constitution Study Television. I am Douglas V. Gibbs, your host. You can learn more about me at douglasvgibbs.com and politicalpistachio.com. And I wanted to talk about the power of prayer when it came to the Constitutional Convention. 4 or 5 weeks had passed, and the arguing among the delegates was so fierce that they pretty much got nothing done except for maybe establish the framework and rules of the convention there in Philadelphia. And while all the youngsters were arguing and fighting and yelling, 81-year-old Benjamin Franklin watched from behind his round-rimmed glasses. And finally he spoke up. He said, "Gentlemen, we have forgotten something." And they were confused. What had they forgotten? And he explained that during the American Revolution that they had been on their knees in prayer. "Have we forgotten our powerful friend?" he asked. The small progress we have made after 4 or 5 weeks, close attendance, and continual reasonings with each other, our different sentiments on almost every question, several of the last producing as many noes and ayes, is, methinks, a melancholy proof of the imperfection of the human understanding. We indeed seem to feel our own want of political wisdom. Since we have been running about in search of it, we have gone back to ancient history for models of government and examined the different forms of those republics which have been formed with the seeds of their own dissolution, now no longer exist, and we have viewed modern states around Europe, but found none their constitutions suitable to our circumstances. In this situation of this assembly, groping, as it were, in the dark to find political truth, and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to eliminate our understanding? Why hadn't they not appealed to God, is what he was saying. And then he goes on to say, "I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests, our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach and byword down to future ages. And what is worse, mankind may hereafter, from this unfortunate instance, despair of establishing governments by human wisdom, and leave it to chance, war, and conquest. I therefore beg leave to move that, henceforth, prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberation be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business, and that one or more of the clergy of this city be requested to officiate in that service." In other words, Benjamin Franklin, who had been known in many ways as being not a very religious individual, requested that they pray before each and every session of the Constitutional Convention. Understand, he had the reputation for not necessarily being the most religious. He had grown up in a religious household, and then he had moved away and then pursued inventions and science. But as he got older, as he said in his deliberation here, that he began to notice things. He firmly believed that the colonies should not have won the American Revolution, and the only reason why they did was because of the hand of Providence. And it was at this time he believed that the hand of Providence needed to be involved once again. Now the delegation began to argue about it. Alexander Hamilton led the group of men that were against praying before each session, and Alexander Hamilton indicated that we do not need foreign aid. After the 4 days of arguing, however, the ones who believed they should pray determined that they didn't have the money to hire a clergy to come into the premises to pray every morning as Benjamin Franklin had requested. Besides, they did not want outside prying eyes to necessarily know what they were up to, because they were creating a bigger government, and that was something they believed that the populace would fear and not understand. So they decided to go up the street to a nearby church to pray. Now the church, let me read this to you. The church was the Reformed Calvinistic Church of Philadelphia. The pastor, however, was not the pastor of that church. The pastor was a Baptist pastor who had actually ceased being a pastor of a church at that point because he had been serving as a chaplain in the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War, and he had not resumed his duties as a pastor at a particular church. His name was William Rogers. And William Rogers now is, I suppose, most famous for leading the Constitutional Convention in prayer on July 4th, 1787. And an interesting individual, he performed the prayer, and he said it as such: "As this is a period, O Lord, big with events impenetrable by any human scrutiny. We fervently recommend to thy fatherly notice that august body assembled in this city, who composed our federal convention. Will it please thee, O eternal I am, to favor them from day to day with thy immediate presence? Be thou their wisdom and their strength. Enable them to devise such measures as may prove happily instrumental in healing all divisions and promoting the good of the great whole. Incline the hearts of all the people to receive with pleasure, combined with the determination to carry into execution whatever these thy servants may wisely recommend, that the United States of America may furnish the world with one example of a free and permanent government, which shall be the result of human and mutual deliberation, and which shall not, like all other governments, whether ancient or modern, spring out of mere chance or be established by force. May we triumph in the cheering prospect of being completely delivered from anarchy and continue under the influence of republican virtue to partake of all the business of cultivated and civilized society. That was the prayer, that very first prayer by William Rogers that had been recommended by Benjamin Franklin. And you know what happened after that? The miracle. This thing was written. The U.S. Constitution. The power of prayer. A delegation of men who went in as nationalists, big government-minded guys, by the way. But after the prayer, they humbled themselves, they began to work together, and what followed was the greatest constitution, the greatest system of government in the history of man. Power of prayer gave us the miracle. Now, we understand that these gentlemen believed in the power of prayer. They believed in God, and I want to close with this, because the very last part of the Declaration of Independence, I think, really nails it. The very last part of the Declaration of Independence reads as such: "And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." Firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. The Founding Fathers were men of prayer. They were men who believed that God's hand was upon their endeavor. Do we still feel the same way today? Thank you for listening. I am Douglas V. Gibbs, DouglasVGibbs.com, PoliticalPistachio.com, and I've got some books out there. Go to DouglasVGibbs.com and look up what my books are. My first one was 25 Myths of the United States Constitution. It goes over 25 things that we have been convinced are true, that are not true about the Constitution. Until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next video right here on YouTube. Thanks for listening. Constitution Study TV.